The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are coming to you live from Southern California this morning. Actually, we're going to be coming from several different places around the country this morning, and I'm thrilled about that because Bonnie Yates is here today. We've been teasing you guys, telling you that we were going to do the due process, how to file due process 101 class with Bonnie Yates, and then she had court dates and it had to be postponed. But she's here today. So that's going to be exciting for those of you who've ever been like, well, I know that it's like this thing and I have these rights, but my ultimate right is to file due process. And I don't know about you as a parent, I just go zzz, zzz, and short out because I go, I don't want to file due process. I don't know how to do that. I would have to have a lawyer to do that. So Bonnie's going to show us how we as parents and caregivers and individuals can file for due process by ourselves so that we don't have to be held up by that. Hey, I'm saying good morning to Sam and to the Stephenson Gretsch family and to Amira. Thank you guys so much for being here and for writing, which brings me to my next thing. We're going to be with you live for the next hour, talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective, but there's no point in doing this without you. The show is meant to be interactive. It's why we do a live show, because we could just tape this and record it, and we do, and we podcast every place. But the reason why we're live is so that there can be this interactive element, because quite honestly, it's what's most fun. And I know that sometimes you need immediate help and support. So that's why we do the live show. So if you're watching the live show, you're watching us on one of the big three, which is Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. I know that a couple of you are still watching today on Periscope, but I'm sure that you've been made aware of the fact that Periscope is morphing into something else. I don't know what yet, but any day now, Periscope will no longer be because I don't know. So if you're still watching on Periscope, we're thrilled that you're here. We don't know when that's going to be cut. But I want to make you guys aware of that Periscope is it's becoming in a cocoon to become a butterfly, we hope. But in any case, we are continuing to be live on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live. So, but we are also live on a bunch of other places as well. Traven is showing you some of those on the screen if you're watching us in picture and sound, but many of you might be listening to us in podcast. And we are thrilled that we are available to so many of you in podcast. We are available wherever you get your podcasts. We are a free download on all of those sites. And if you go to where you get your podcasts and you can't find us, would you please do me the favor of letting us know where that is so we can attempt to be where you need us to be. That's really what this show is about. We have now been doing the show. This is our 10th year. I know, it's kind of crazy. But exciting. And, when we started this show, we wanted to be available to you in as many places as we could, but to have it be free to you. I'll talk about in a second about who you is, but I want to mention that the mission of this entire endeavor is to provide information and inspiration. That's really what we're about. So who is the who? Who are we providing it to? Who are you? To us, you are the larger autism community, which starts and is most importantly built around individuals who are themselves on the autism spectrum, whether that is a child, a teen, or an adult. They are the beating heart of our community. They're our reason why. But we also include in that community absolutely everyone who loves those individuals, because we know together, we hold hands, si se puede, there is a lot that we can do and that we must do to protect, defend, and encourage that others see that individuals on the spectrum deserve the dignity, the employment, the housing, opportunities to live their full, rich, and purposeful life. And that is individual, that we cannot clump them all together and say, oh, what they need is this, because that doesn't address the individual, right? But we must, spend time talking to legislators and making sure that things are put in place that support and not detract from those individuals leading their best lives, and not telling them what their best life is, but allowing them to tell us in the way that they communicate what it is they need and helping to support them to do that. That's why we're here. I count myself as one of those who loves individuals on the autism spectrum. I am the mother of an individual who was diagnosed with autism at a very young age. And I know for some of you, it's like, oh, it's another parent. I don't want to listen to another parent. But I would say to you that, I learned a lot. I'm not there. I still have more to learn. But part of my experience being on this planet is that I understand that I'm not going to be done learning until I take my last breath. And I hope even then I'm not going to be done learning, right? So I have a lot to learn from my friends and my son, people I know who have that diagnosis, right? But I want to be an ally. I want to be in support. And I hope that for those of you who, whichever side of this equation you happen to be on, if you are a person who's been diagnosed with autism, I hope you will see that caregivers and parents can be allies, and we want to be allies. Yes, sometimes we step in it, and sometimes I am guilty. I have a very dear friend, Alex Plank, who reminds me on a regular basis. I will say something and he will call me out and he will say, Shannon, what you just said was ableist. And I have to be humble enough to hear that, take it in, take responsibility, and learn. Yeah. And I know that there are many, many, many parents who feel the same way. So I think we get there together. That's my plan. That's why I'm here. And that we can spread and sprinkle love as we go. But it's got to start with a humbling place of saying, I don't know, but I want to know, right? Absolutely love that. And we have parents who are writing in and saying, yes, I want to learn. Thank you, Angel, for saying I want to learn as much as you. Yes, I mean, like we all, it comes from a place of love that I remember when my son was little, all I wanted to be able to see what he could see, to understand what he could understand. That's all I wanted. And now I am in the really wonderful position that he has enough communication that I can ask him. That doesn't mean that I always understand. And there are times that he gets frustrated with me and he says, Mom, you don't get it. And I think that's the truth. I don't get it, but I want to. And I want to keep learning. So I think that's why we're here. Information, inspiration, we get there together. But I think it involves all of us. And the more we work to get all of us on that page, not just the parents, but how about the grandparents? And how about the teachers and the politicians? We have to get there. I spent some time this morning reading through, because I got an email and that gave me the link again to read President Biden's plan for inclusion for individuals with disabilities. It's a good read, y'all. I encourage you to check that out. And I wanted to make sure, because the other day when we were talking about IEPs and I was going on and I was saying, okay, candidate Biden promised us full funding for IDEA. And whenever I say that, people write to me and they're like, where are you seeing that? I need to see that in writing. And so I went this morning and re-looked it up, and I got it. It says it in writing. It's still on his website. He's not disavowing it. I know he's got other things going on right now, but come on. How about that? Let's get that full funding for IDEA. Somebody said, would love to know how my 15-year-old on the spectrum feels, as he is nonverbal and he can't tell us. And I'm sending you a hug because that's, I can't even imagine. I know how hard it was for me when my son was 3, 4, and 5, and I had no idea how he viewed the world. It's so important that I'm just going to say to you, functional communication. I want to make sure, does your child have functional communication? Is there a way that they are able to communicate their basic needs to you? Let's make sure of that. But then, of course, it's important. We want to know what they feel. I don't want you to give up on it, though. The case of Carly Fleischman, that she showed no signs of being able to communicate in any way, shape, or form at all until she was like right around that age. I think she was 14 when they didn't even know if she knew the alphabet. And she took the keyboard from her caregiver and typed out, "Teeth hurt, please help." Like, no one knew that she knew how to spell. And now go watch Carly Fleischman interview Shannon Tating. If you haven't seen that, I'm telling you, I'm just gonna say you're welcome, because it's gonna make your day to hear everything that Carly is feeling and thinking. But it didn't come until later, so I don't want you to give up. Okay, someone else says, my son is almost 3. I want to teach him joint attention. Any tips for that? Yes. It's funny, somebody wrote it. I wonder if you're the same person who wrote about this on Facebook over the weekend that I ended up being in a conversation. So there are lots of ways to teach joint attention, and we can start with very young babies to work on joint attention. Basically, we need to get really hip to the whole idea of preference assessment, that even young babies, we do preference assessments where you try to figure out what do they like right now in this moment and is very exciting to them in this moment. You don't plan on that being what's exciting to them for an hour, because, you and I, what we like right now might change in an hour, right? But you find things that they really like right now. So maybe you line up the stuffed animals and you see which one they crawl to, or they may not even notice the stuffed animals. So you have to look for things that they really like. But then I want to encourage you, there's 2 things that I want to tell you about. There's something called iBehavioral Training. It's a website. What they sell are e-learning modules. So it's videos like this, but with experts who are teaching you about a very specific thing. And I'm not one of the experts, right? But you can go in and it's like they're between $7, and I think the most expensive one, which is a long one, is like $32. I don't know about you, but I've bought books that were more expensive than that, right? And you can watch the video over and over and over again, and you can have other people in your family watch it, right? To learn how we begin to teach things in a really effective way for even young kiddos. But then if you want specifically the joint attention, I would hop over onto skillsforautism.com. They have the curriculum to teach absolutely anything. You'll want to do yourself a favor. First, fill out the first part. Make sure that you're accurate with the dates of, a lot of times, like I'll fill things out and I'll put a fake name and they want the birthday and I don't put the right one, right? I don't know who I think I'm hiding from or why I think I'm hiding from somebody. But on Skills, you want to make sure you put your child's actual birth date in. It's not going to be used against you ever in any way, but it gauges what's appropriate for them based on their birthday. And you can't change it once it's put in. So put the actual birth date in, but then you can go in and say joint attention. You put it in the search feature and it will show you lessons and it'll walk you through exactly how you teach joint attention to a very small child. But can I also say, sign up to get ABA. Get on a waiting list, because I think there are a lot of waiting lists again because of COVID. Get some ABA, get some people to come in and help you. It will make your life easier, yeah? And you probably have insurance for it because it works, and insurance will pay for it. Somebody else, I'm saying hi to Dwayne. and Sandra and Angel. So the websites, and Traven's going to put them up on the screen again, but for those of you listening in podcast, ibehavioraltraining.com. And also the other one is skills for FOR autism.com. But Traven, do you have the phone number? Because I'm so bad with phone numbers. Because you can also just call the phone number, and you call the number, you get both of them in one because they're working together now. 877-975-4559. Here's what I recommend you do. You ready for this? Call them, tell them that you saw it on Autism Live, ask them what free trainings they have this week, because in COVID, they always have a free training. Ask them what the free training is this week. Say, Shannon said so. And if you end up getting skills, and if you say you saw it on Autism Live, they'll give you a 10% discount. Okay, so get the free training on ibehavioraltraining.com, but you'll get that by calling the phone number. Again, 877-975-4559. Sam wants to know, can you get ABA without a diagnosis? Yes, you'll have to pay for it though. If you have the diagnosis, there's grants and funding and insurance to pay for it, but you can absolutely get ABA without a diagnosis. It's just so expensive that I don't know if you want to do that. Helen, good morning. And Sandra, I'm excited that you're here. Okay, you're here for Bonnie, and I'm excited that you're here because this is going to help you too. Okay. Okay. And the person, I wanted to know that we have functional communication, uses sign language and objects for reference. I just want to encourage you, get even more functional communication. I love sign language. Sign language is beautiful, but the problem is not enough people understand it. So you're teaching them a language that the vast majority of people in the world don't understand yet. So we want to make sure that they have a method that everyone would understand, which means pushing a button on an iPad and you push enough and it speaks for you, or that we train everybody how to do sign language. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're getting behind, and I don't want to be behind for Bonnie. We're going to power through jargon in under 2 minutes, Traven. I don't even know if it's possible, but here we go. It's time for the jargon of the day, where we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani nani are they talking about. So this is important for today and for every day. FBA. It is not the FBI. Please don't make that mistake. I have done that before. People make fun of you. FBA, let's go to our actual definition. It stands for Functional Behavior Assessment. It's a multi-step problem-solving assessment process designed to determine the function of a behavior. Every time any of us engages in a behavior, it has a function. This is one of the basic principles of ABA. All that behavior that you see your child do that you go, I think that's random, I don't understand it, I'm telling you, and ABA will tell you, it has a purpose. They are lining their cars up for a purpose. They are flapping their hands for a purpose. They are beating their heads for a purpose. And if we don't get hip to the fact that there is a purpose, we can't start to intervene with the things that are hurting them. So we must do a functional behavior assessment. We have to have an expert look at it to see what it is. Let's go on to our working definition here, which I've already sort of jumped into. So it's an essential process that helps us to understand why a challenging behavior is happening so that we can change it effectively. Can I hear, cue the angels singing? Because if your child, my child, was hitting his head on the kitchen floor, and I was just distraught, like, why? I don't understand why this is happening. Why would anybody hurt themselves? My ABA team came in, looked at it, figured out what the function was, came up with a plan, and that behavior stopped. And my son never hit his head on the kitchen floor again. It is not okay to try to change a behavior unless you know why it's happening. And here's another important thing. When we know what's happening, we have to fulfill that need in a different way. We can't just say, oh, I don't want to see the hand flapping anymore. It makes me nervous. You need to deal with those feelings. But if the hand flapping happens for a reason, And we cannot begin to decide even if we should intervene with a behavior that's not hurting somebody until we know what the function of the behavior is. And then we give a replacement behavior for the function, or we teach them a replacement behavior for the function in order before we can start to change the behavior. This is where we get upside down a lot of times. In the world of ABA, and good quality ABA says we got to know what the function is and we got to replace the function, or we are not going to effectively change this behavior, and we're not going to take into consideration the needs of the individual. So for my son, he hit his head on the kitchen floor because he didn't want to do what I had him do. Like I would give him a task and I would say, okay, it's time to pick up your toys. He would go in and hit his head on the kitchen floor. And how would I react? I would pick him up, rub his head, give him lemonade and cookies. So to him, he was like, I don't want to pick up my toys. I want the lemonade and the cookies. I don't have a way of asking for them, but I know if I hit my head on the kitchen floor, she'll give it to me. Well, once we understood that's what was happening, we could change that, right? But you got to know what you're doing, and an expert looking at it, doing a functional behavior assessment. Anytime your kiddo comes home from school with a note and they go, well, your child did X, Y, and Z in class, you want to write back and say, what's the function of that behavior? Have their expert do an FBA, then we can make a behavior intervention plan. Anything less is messing around. Okay. All right. Let's continue on to our question of the day. I'm already late. How did that happen? I couldn't do it in 2 minutes, Traven. But Bonnie is not here yet, so we're gonna power through. Okay, here's our question of the day. What behavior would you like to change? You can pick this as something for yourself or something for your significant other, your boss, your employees, or it could be for you if you're on the autism spectrum. It could be you, or it could be the person you love on the autism spectrum. What behavior would you like to change? What are you or the person you love doing that's making you not enjoy your life? And the great thing is that if we start to look at it in this modality and go, why is this behavior happening? Why are they doing this? What need is being fulfilled for them in doing this? Then we can say, how can we fill this need in another way? So for the person who says, I want to stop smoking, what is the need that is being filled by smoking? Is it that it's the only, my great grandmother used to tell me that she smoked to calm her down. Okay, we know that smoking is a stimulant, right? So that makes no sense, except that when she got to have a cigarette, she had 5 kids. And when she got to have a cigarette, it was time for her to go sit in the backyard and just be with herself. And she would take a big, long inhale of that cigarette. And it was the only time of the day that she got a deep breath. So it kind of did calm her down because she got a minute to herself. So that was what the function of that behavior was. It didn't really have anything to do with the cigarette or what was in the cigarette. And so if we wanted to change her behavior, we would make sure that that need got fed, that she would have time every day for herself, 3 minutes, which is what it took to smoke the cigarette, where she would breathe and meditate and be by herself and no one could interrupt her, right? So we got to fill the need first, and then we can also work on all the other aspects of the behavior, and we most especially would want to reward them choosing the meditation over picking up and lighting the cigarette, right? Give them some other reward, and this is the way in which we change behavior. If you are not looking at the function of the behavior before you change it, you're throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what will stick, right? Not a good plan. If you are not, then once you know what the function of the behavior is, giving a replacement for it, then you're asking the person to do without the thing they needed. Come on, how successful is that going to be? Not, right? And if you are not rewarding the change in behavior and choosing the other form of getting their need met, then you run the risk of not being successful. So this is how we change behavior, not by punishing it, not by berating the person, not by telling them they're not doing a good job. Guess what? None of that works. We've got scientific studies that show that does not work. But figuring out what the function is, fulfilling the function in a different way and rewarding the change in behavior, guess what? Science that shows that it works. I know, it's craziness. I'm so glad you're all here to see me lose my mind. All right, moving on. We always have a topic of the week, and then I think Bonnie's going to be here any second. We're going to, isn't this a great topic? Flipping the script. Because so often we get entrenched in this is what it is. This is how life is. And we will start saying to ourselves, I can't, they can't, we can't, right? And look, all of that's available. I can tell you 38 things we can't do today, right? And if I focus on that, that is going to be what my experience of today is. We can't, right? But we can flip that script around and we can say, okay, but what can we do? So if you're somebody, I'm using the example of smoking. If you're somebody who's like, I've tried to quit smoking. I've tried, I've tried this, that, whatever. If you flip the script and say, okay, maybe I can't make myself quit smoking, but maybe what can I find? Just start with asking yourself, what am I getting out of this? And how could I get that in another way? And see what that does. And then see about rewarding yourself for even thinking that way and see what that does. I also want to say to you that so often people will write in and say, well, they'll talk about an issue they're having with their child, and it boils down to compliance. That, we all want, well, the truth is we want children who are compliant when we want them to be compliant, but we don't want them to be compliant all the time, right? Isn't that the truth? So we don't want them to mindlessly obey, right? Because that makes them unsafe and fodder for people who are the bad people, right? But we want them to want the same things that we want. So how do we get that? And how we get that is not by training them to be compliant. What we do is we reward them for when they are compliant in the right situations. And we reward them over and over and over again. And here's the other rub to this. We reward them in a way that is meaningful to them. Some people like to be praised and some people don't. For some people, praise is painful, right? And it isn't across the board. Like my son loves to be praised by other people, but there's something about being praised by me that's hard. And I have to do it in very specific ways, or it's hard, right? And we gotta be hip to what like really is rewarding to them. So this is a little trick, homework I'm giving you for today. So if there's somebody in your life that is really just maybe it's that you want your husband to pick up his socks off the floor. This is not my husband. He's very good about that. But I know a lot of people complain about this. So, and we could berate them and say, why can't you pick up the socks, right? We already know that doesn't work. So what I want you to do is find an excuse to praise them for something else. This works on everyone. It doesn't matter whether this is your best friend. It doesn't matter if this is your spouse. It doesn't matter if it's your crazy Aunt Margaret, right? Like find a reason to praise them for something that's praiseworthy. Find it. And if you can't find it, and this works great with our kids too, because some people have said to me, I can't find anything to praise them about, Shannon. Ask them to do something that they already want to do or they were already about to do. So your kid who is addicted to the remote, and you don't want them to touch the remote most of the time, ask them to get the remote and put the TV on the channel that they want, right? And then praise them for what a good boy you are. Thank you. You did that so well, right? And you might find it like it's hard at first because we're out of the habit of praising, but try it. See how the rest of the day goes. See how you feel. See how they feel. And I want you to let me know because I think it changes everything and it changes how you feel. It's like you can feel the molecules completely shift around. And you can see it on your child or your spouse or the teacher, whoever it is. Find a reason to praise. I'm saying good morning to our Journey Cameron's New Life. And somebody's asking if I got their email. I did not. I will look for that. Okay. So it's all about flipping the script. What's wrong is always available. but we can always find something to be grateful for, something to be excited about, something to really praise. And so that's our topic for today. And right on time, Bonnie Yates, special education attorney, is joining us. I was afraid I wasn't going to get done in time, but she's here. Bonnie, they are already excited to be here and want to learn what you have to teach us today. Bonnie Yates is a special education attorney with the Tollner Law Offices, and it is our privilege to have her join us. Bonnie, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
All right, tell us just a little bit about Tollner Law Offices and give us your disclaimer.
Okay, so Bonnie Law Offices is a 7-attorney firm. We're based in San Jose, California, with offices in El Segundo and Irvine. We do pretty much everything that you might need us to do if you had a child with a disability. So that includes not just IEPs and special education, but also discrimination under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and the ADA. We do regional center stuff. We do some higher education stuff for students who need accommodations in a university setting. The disclaimer is that we are giving general advice to you about your rights under state and federal law, not a substitute for a consultation with an attorney. If you need a consultation with an attorney and you're in the state of California, you can go onto the Tollner Law Office's website, fill out a form, and you will be set up with a complimentary consultation. If you're in other states and you need the same thing, I suggest you go to www.copaa.net and look at their attorney list. They have a list of good and committed attorneys. So that's all of that. What we had talked about was, is there something parents can do to improve their legal position when they have a dispute with the school district? And I kind of threw out something. And I was like, well, yeah, they could file their own due process complaint. And Shannon was like, really? But really, how would they do that? So I had a couple weeks in between when we discussed it and now to sort of think about whether my offhanded suggestion was actually something that was worth exploring further with you. And I decided it was. And the reason I decided it is because when you go in and meet with the school district and you start getting pushback, the thing that you can say to them is, I'm in the process of, or I have consulted with an attorney. They've given me a sense of what my case is worth, but they've also indicated how much they would charge me for representing them. I'm prepared to do that if we can't resolve this successfully between ourselves. However, if we're not able to resolve it successfully, the cost of the case is going to get much more expensive because I'm going to have to spend more money. And I know that means you have to spend more money. So that's kind of the threat that I think people should trot out. We could talk a little bit more. I guess I'm not supposed to say threat. The position that people so let's talk a little bit about what due process looks like. Now, I did this under California law because, why? Because I'm in California. Some of you aren't. So you can go in and you can look at the federal rules on mediation and due process. They're really California, I'm sure, tailored theirs based on federal law. So I think what you're hearing today would be similar to what exists under federal law. And for your own state, if you look at the state hearing office in your state, they should have information for you about due process procedures. Also, when you get your parental safeguards at your district IEP, the procedural safeguards do include discussion about mediation and due process. So some things that I think you could do preparatory to actually initiating due process, okay? One thing would be to try to do a little evaluation of your case and get a sense of what the district might have done that's wrong. I have certain clients, they're pretty attuned to their kids and they're pretty attuned to like smoke signals, even if they don't know exactly what the smoke signals are saying. But, they call me and they say, I think something's really wrong with what just happened. And they kind of describe it generally. I think if you're having a feeling like that, you might have isolated a violation, even if you don't know how to articulate it. Okay. So Special Education Rights and Responsibilities, SERR, is a very good general book about the IDEA that you could look at to get a sense of the process generally. And then for your case evaluation, obviously what you're going to want to be able to do is articulate issues that you think constitute violations of the IDEA. So how could you issue spot? Well, I'm not saying you want to make a federal case out of it, but if you do, you can call the Special Education Hearing Office in Sacramento, and you can get from them the decisions every month emailed to you, and you can read those decisions. And really, that's what the lawyers do too. We read the decisions, we get ideas, we see how the law is being articulated, and we bring all that to the table when we file for due process. And in terms of like having just a gut feeling that something is bad, but not exactly knowing how to attack it, attorney Valerie Vanneman, who's a very fine attorney and has done this almost longer than anybody, sent me a decision of hers against LAUSD that she won on, and she raised the issue of the frequency band. Now, frequency band is something that says he will receive OT 1 to 5 times per week at the frequency of X. And there's no way from looking at the IEP document for you to tell whether you're getting 100 minutes of service or whether you're getting 20 minutes of service. And she was really bothered by this issue, and she waited for the right case and she raised the issue. And I was like, darn, like I knew, I had a gut feeling that the way that is written, it can't be right. I should have raised that issue. So the point is, you learn a lot of good things by reading or even skimming decisions. And when you read decisions, you know, like when I read decisions, I look and see who the judge is. I look and see who the opposing counsel is. And then I go all the way to the end and I see what the judge ruled on. And then I back up and I look at the issues that I'm interested in. But I don't spend an hour reading each one of these decisions. But there's a lot of information in them, and it's not a bad idea to look at some of those. Also, as you know, under state law, you're entitled to your child's educational file within 5 business days of getting written notice to the district. And so you might want to get the complete records and the service logs. Like I have a client who's trying to figure out how much ABA supervision she missed during school closure. So one way to get at that would be the service logs. Think about whether you need an independent educational evaluation at district expense, which I've covered in other programs. And if you're really going to go to due process, you probably do. But if your real plan is you're going to try to sit down and negotiate with these people, and then if it doesn't go away, you're going to hire an attorney. Your attorney can worry about all of that later. So why do I think this is going to work? Well, I think that
Bonnie, can I ask a question? Because we have this question come in about something you just talked about. Can we get the contact in? Where do you get that email for the Special Education Hearing Office so that somebody can get it mailed to them? Okay, she'll forward it to me, and I'll post that.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt, but that's
all right. That's all right. So why do I think this will work? Okay, 2 reasons. First of all, because I think the districts are poor right now because of their budget cutbacks as a result of COVID, and I think they are looking to make quick settlements for less money if they can. Why? Because I think the districts have acknowledged in like private trainings and things like that, or stuff I read you off of LRP, that they suspect that they have liability for every student who has an IEP during the period of school closure. So I've just sort of made up a number for myself. I think the districts are willing to give $20,000 or $25,000 potentially and attorney's fees without a due process filing. For me, like they will, I'll write them and say, hey, are you interested in a settlement without a filing? And they say yes. So I don't know what that number would be for you, but there's definitely money on the table. Okay. Although some districts are just kicking the can down the road, others are not, you know, some of them are just.
So Bonnie, are you saying that we don't want to say threat, this action of saying I'm going to file due process and have legal help if you don't do this, that basically what you're putting on the table is this is going to cost the school $25,000 if they don't come to an agreement. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that that's what I'm doing, and the fact that I'm getting positive responses suggests to me that the district knows they have tremendous liability, especially for the first semester of school closure, and that if they can make some settlements that are quick and dirty, that they're willing to do that. What I'm suggesting for you, though, parents, no, is I'm actually suggesting that you file a due process or you initiate some kind of due process procedure, because your position is different than mine. When I write this attorney, she knows that I'm capable of filing a due process and going to hearing, and that influences her decision. Okay. So how can you threaten them with an attorney if you don't have any money? Well, it turns out that there are attorneys in the state of California that will provide low cost or no cost representation. So in addition to getting the hearing decisions, which I'm going to show Shannon how that's easily done, the Office of Administrative Hearings for the state of California and the other states has a list of attorneys that do low cost or no cost representation. Okay, so whether you can get one of those attorneys and whether you like the way they practice or not is a different issue than what you are conveying to the school district when you tell them you're going to get an attorney. Because the school district knows that people that have very few resources, if they're tenacious, can still find an attorney to represent them. And those cases cost the district money because they have to hire an attorney as soon as you bring an attorney. So you definitely, can, as a first step, tell the district that you intend to seek legal representation if it's necessary and you're aware that it's available, but you want to see whether everybody can sit down without, a lot of rancor and stress and everything and work things out. But so it's kind of like what we would call in the old days, a veiled threat. You're not going to threaten them. You're just going to say, hey, look, I'd love to settle this with you. It'd be better for all of us. It'd be faster. It'd be cheaper. But I'm also aware that if I can't, I'm going to be able to secure an attorney to represent me. Anyway, so here's the stuff that I want you to know about, okay? Because all of this stuff is written down and you can look at it. California Education Code 56500. That begins the whole section kind of on your procedural safeguards and your due process rights, okay? So take a look, and there's no magic in this. All you have to do is go in and put California Education Code 56500, and you will get immediately redirected to, I think it's like California Ledge Info dot something rather. I forgot what it's called, but you will get automatic immediate access to that section. You do not need to have Lexis or Westlaw. And if you look at section 56501, it talks about when filing for due process would be important. Now, why does this matter? Because OAH, the Office of Administrative Hearings, has only has jurisdiction over certain types of matters. So examples of things they don't have jurisdiction over. They don't have jurisdiction over permit appeals. So if you're attending a district special education program on a permit and the district tries to take your permit away, OAH can't get involved in that. OAH cannot decide claims brought under Section 504 or the ADA. They have jurisdiction in certain situations only. So let me tell you what they are, because it's going to cover everything pretty much that you have. The first is, there is a proposal to initiate or change the identification, assessment, or educational placement of the child, or the provision of a free, appropriate public education to the child. Or there is a refusal to initiate or change the identification, assessment, or educational placement of the child, or the provision of a free, appropriate public education to the child. That language might be very familiar to you. That's the language that's in the prior written notices that you've been getting, because the districts have been sending out so many of those since school closure. So if you look at that language, a proposal to initiate or change the identification, So that means if the district proposes or refuses to change your child's eligibility, that's a due process issue. If the district proposes to initiate or change something about an assessment, that's a due process issue. So due process deals with inappropriate assessments. Educational placement, well, that really includes goals, services, and placement. And that's something else you can raise in your due process. So basically, your due process is going to look at, most of the time, you're not going to have an eligibility dispute. Most of the time, you're going to have a dispute about goals, services, placement, right? And so if you file a due process hearing request and you raise issues related to goal, service, or placement, or assessments, you're going to have a due process that's within the jurisdiction of the OAH. Okay, so that's
got two quick questions for you. Somebody wants to know what is the difference between a district IEP and a school IEP? Are they the same?
None, no difference.
Okay. And then we do have a lot of people who've written in the last year and said that even though their child has an ASD diagnosis, they were deemed not eligible for an IEP. So if you don't actually have the IEP yet, you can use due process okay.
Yes, and that comes under, there is a proposal to initiate or change the identification. So in other words, if you have an initial SST meeting and the district does an assessment and they come back and they say, I know you have autism and we're going to offer you a 504 plan, you can appeal that decision to the special education hearing office. Okay?
Oh, we just have districts who are saying we see no educational need in your child.
Well, I think we did talk about educational impact on the show, and it's not the same as academic impact. And maybe we need to have another show where we just talk specifically about educational impact and or prior written notice, which is kind of a hot topic these days. But for right now, I'm willing to put my money on the fact that if you have ASD, you should qualify for an IEP. I've always maintained that having a little bit of autism is like being a little bit pregnant. I'm not saying it's not easier if you have a little bit of autism than if you have a lot of autism, but I think if a district says you have a little bit of autism, it's not going to have an educational impact. I've never yet had the experience where I've sent a professional into the classroom and they haven't seen educational impact. Part of what's frustrating about this is that the districts select for kids that are on perfect behavior, don't talk to anybody, and just sit there and do their work like little, machines or something. But that situation is one in which the child should be interacting with other children and their teacher. They should be getting into some mischief, So, what I've seen where the district says there's no educational impact, what they're really saying is, I can get this kid through. I can pass him on from grade to grade. He's not a behavior problem. If he's not a behavior problem and he has at least average cognition, they're going to try to minimize his educational needs and the educational impact of his disability. But, my experience has been that if you look at it, you're going to be able to find the educational impact. Anyway, under this section, okay, so those are the grounds for due process, okay? And as part of the rights that you have under the education code, you have the right to a mediation. So that's one thing we're going to talk about. And you have the right to request that at any point during the hearing process. You have the right to examine pupil records. You have the right to a fair and impartial administrative hearing at the state level before a person knowledgeable in the laws governing special education and administrative hearings. You have the right to have the pupil attend the hearing. You have the right to open the hearing to the public if you want, because typically these hearings are private and they're closed. Okay, so if you're feeling intimidated at this point about your ability to initiate the hearing process, if you go to the California Department of Education website, they have a form you can fill out that's so easy. It doesn't require you to actually draft a complaint. It just requires you to do your best job that you can of articulating what the issues are. And generally, if you file that, that's going to get the process going. Now, the district does have the right to file a motion, and the grounds of the motion would be that they don't think that your pleading is sufficient to state a complaint under the IDEA. But all that would happen if they did that is you would just have to maybe tighten up your issues some. But my point is, I think most of the time when parents file these complaints, like I see them when I'm reading the OAH decisions, I don't see that the attorney is necessarily trying to get the complaint dismissed, because usually, the attorney for the district knows that sooner or later they're going to have to deal with this person anyway. So when you file a request for due process, you have the right under section 56501.5 of the Education Code to have a resolution meeting. Okay, so the resolution meeting is a pre-mediation settlement meeting, and you're going to sit down with the district, and maybe some members of the IEP team. You're going to talk about what the problems are and what it takes to resolve your complaint. So that would be the first place you'd have a meeting with the district, and that would certainly be a place to make it clear to them that you've read your procedural safeguards, you understand your rights, you're in the process of interviewing attorneys to see who's going to represent you, but that if you could work this out without attorney involvement, you're open to that. Like, I don't think you should appear over eager, because as soon as you mention the word attorney, you're going to have the desired effect, and they're going to be like, oh God, So put yourself in the district's position for a moment. If their operating concept is that every student with an IEP in their district is a potential due process because of school closure, they're pretty nervous. I mean, I've talked to a few attorneys that have indicated to me that they're nervous about this. Okay, so you can have a resolution meeting before your mediation, and the meeting shall include a representative of the local education agency who has decision-making authority on behalf of the agency. The meeting shall not include an attorney of the local education agency unless the parent is accompanied by an attorney. So they can't.
So many questions, Bonnie, and some of them are directly related and some of them are not, but we have so many questions.
Well, okay, so here's my suggestion. There's not really any urgency that I get through the whole thing today, other than my own sense of just wanting to contain the material. So let's stop and take questions.
Okay, if we have an IEP, does it matter how the child is classified?
Mostly not, because eligibility isn't supposed to determine what services you get. People historically have not liked emotional disturbance. They felt that it was stigmatizing. People have sometimes felt that if you had other health impairment on your IEP, you might not get residential placement. Somebody that has autism or ADHD could have their eligibility under other health impairment. I've seen kids with autism have a secondary of speech and language impairment, or SLD. Those are just supposed to be descriptors. The unique needs are supposed to be what drives services.
Okay. Somebody says we filed for mediation and are in desperate need for how to handle this productively.
Yeah. What should we do?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Why don't you call some attorneys and get some free advice?
That's a great idea. And I don't know which state they're in, but obviously, if you're in California, I suggest
the hearing office has a list. I guarantee you.
Okay. We've got another person saying my son's school is not constantly using his speech app. Some days they are using it, but often I get it home and they have not worked on it with him. How should I talk to them about this? And they go on to say, I send his speech device daily. It is in his IEP goals. Don't they have to work on it with him?
Well, I don't know if I understand your question. The goal they have to work on, the method they use is within their discretion, if that makes sense. Methodology has been left up to the school district. So if the goal is to get Johnny to learn 50 new words in his word bank in the next year, there's no hard and fast way that they have to get him there. They just have to get him there. So you said something about a speech app. The issue should be, are they working with him in a way that's going to cause him to meet his IEP goals in the area of speech and language? Not, are they on the speech app every day? And, I have kids that have specific learning disability, and the district puts them on their, reading program several times a week for 20 minutes, and they're using the reading program, but since it's not necessarily the right one for the kid, it's not working. So you have to look at the thing holistically and see whether what they're doing is going to get them to where they need to be in a year's time.
Okay, and then another question. First of all, the family that wanted to know about the mediation, they are in New Jersey.
Well, I think you go onto the COPA list then and you talk to some attorneys in New Jersey.
Okay.
Some states it's a real problem, okay, finding an attorney. It is not a problem in California. It is not a problem in New Jersey. It is not a problem in New York. And all you have to do is just reach out.
Okay. And then somebody wants to know, why does the regional center only allow rollovers to some families and not to others? How can I get the regional center to allow makeup hours when there are long spans of time with no respite or no nursing staff?
Well, I guess you could argue that that's a fair hearing question, although we're not talking about the regional center's fair hearing process. But you can have an IPP meeting with the regional center, and if they won't give you the makeup hours, then you have to do a hearing.
Okay. And then I have another question that I am apologizing because I did not get it. And my apologies to that parent. When you send it to me via that same email, I will reach out to Bonnie separately outside of the show. And I apologize to you that for some reason I don't have that. Okay. And we are a minute away from being done, Bonnie. So I'm going to ask you to tell us again where people can reach you and tell them also about COPA.
Okay. I'm going to send you, Shannon, some code sections for next week so people can look at what it is that I'm talking about. Okay. That's one thing. Two, I'm going to send you the material on the hearing office decision so people can see how to get that. And I'm going to include information about how to get the California list of low cost or no cost attorneys. As far as the rest of this, when we start this up again next week, we'll just start with the resolution. We'll back up a little bit and then pick up kind of where we left off, because there's a bunch more stuff we have to talk about. If you need help in the meantime, go to the Tollner Law Office's website, and you can email us for help if you're in California. What else am I supposed to say?
COPA, give that one more time.
Oh yeah. If you need an attorney in another state, www.copaa.net. Yeah. I don't have that many calls from people that say, I can't find an attorney. What I have are calls from people that don't really know that the system has low cost and no cost attorneys. And not every firm is going to give you a low cost or no cost attorney. They're going to, in many cases, look at your ability to pay something. But I guess another topic of discussion for later is how the attorney's fees in these situations work. Because I think once you understand that, you'll see why the districts are afraid about you getting an attorney. So we'll include some discussion at the end of this about how attorney's fees work and why the districts hate attorney's fees in the same way that they hate private schools. And they do hate private schools, especially now because so many people are flocking to them. Anyway.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you greatly and all that you do, Bonnie. Thank you so much. And we hope you have a lovely, productive week.
I will have a lovely and productive week. Thank you very much. And you all do the same.
Thank you, Bonnie. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
And just, we're out of time, but just programming note, tomorrow, we're rerunning still Temple Grandin. We're going to have Temple Grandin on again live soon. I just don't know the exact date. But definitely we're working towards having her on in April. On Wednesday, we have Dr. Doreen Granpichet back. Thursday, I've got a great guest that you guys are going to absolutely love. And then on Friday, we have Vince Redmond back, licensed marriage and family therapist. Keep your questions coming in. She did not give the email for the special education hearing office. She said she would send that to me, but she also said you could Google it. If you just put in whatever your state special education hearing office, that it would put you directly into there. And the code that she said to put in was 56501. So I know I wrote that down. I was taking notes because when Bonnie gets on a roll like that, you got to take some notes, right? So anyway, sending hugs to all of you. We will be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Stay tuned for this one last message. See you tomorrow. Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.